Emily, welcome to Art and Cocktails. I'm so excited to connect with you, and I'm so excited that I don't know why it took me so long to reach out, but welcome to the show.
I love being here. Thank you for having me. It's very, very sweet.
I'm really excited to share kind of like your story and all the amazing things that you do, both as an artist and in service of the art community. But before we jump in, I would love to hear a little bit about your work. What are you passionate about when it comes to your art practice? How would you describe your paintings to your collectors and your viewers? And just a little bit about how you got started as an artist.
Okay, so how I feel about my art now, I I feel like in the past 3 years have settled into the fact that maybe I'm a really, really selfish painter. And by that I mean, I think some people paint because they want the viewer to see something. A lot of artists, I think, approach creativity with that as their like primary focus. And I love that. And I love walking through museums and being like, oh my gosh, I'm learning something as I go through this. I think I paint in the opposite way, which is I paint because I want to feel something in the moment. And mostly I want to feel like I'm grounded. I can find like regulation, like I can feel like internal regulation and peace and like a sense of like not even control because you can't control paint. If any
Yeah.
painters are listening, which I'm assuming a lot of you are painters, you know you are not the one in charge here. You can pretend, but you're not. Um, so I think I come to the creative process with that as my primary focus, which means that if my painting turns out a certain way and looks a certain way to someone else, awesome, love it. If they enjoy it, great. But what I'm primarily focused on is how can I feel after this 1 or 3 hour session in the studio and just like it also comes from like going through a few years of like a lot of internal um hardship and like going through a divorce and like a lot of like just really, really hard things in my life and realizing that, oh, I need this practice for me first and foremost. And if someone else loves it, awesome. And thankfully, my collectors do love it. And it's been my career for the past, like, well, kind of my whole life. I began selling art when I was a kid, but
Same, same. I'd love to hear more about that. But yeah, that's amazing. Oh my gosh. And I don't think it's selfish because as I'm sure you know, well, I feel like we're aligned in this area where that energy does get transferred to your collectors then. And I'm sure you've had feedback. Have your collectors said like, oh, I really feel this piece or, um,
absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons in 2015, I was stacked up with commissions. I paint landscapes. So I had like maybe 4 landscape commissions a month. And that was a lot for me. That was a lot for my pace, but I needed the income. I wanted the security. I wanted to know that I could do this. Like, I had 2 kids. I needed that stability. So I was like, yes, I'll do all of these commissions. That is so many commissions.
a lot.
I got to like maybe 2/3 of the way through the year and I was just a wreck. Like I did not want to go to the studio. I did not want to be a painter. I was like, I'm ready to just burn all this to the ground and stop and I'll be a receptionist at a dentist's office. I don't know what I'll do, but I'll figure out something else. Um, and I remember just sitting in my studio, like commissions swirling all around me, my kids in the studio with me. And I just sat here on the floor like literally crying. And I'm like, do I want to be a painter? Do I want to do this? And if the answer is yes, because I think deep down it is, and it has been, and obviously it still is since, 10 years later, we're still doing it. Um, then I have to get back to doing it for the process and not for the commissioner, not for the collector, not for the buyer, not for the gallery, not for the random brand that might pop into my DMs. Like I have to do this because I love the process. And that really shifted everything. And you're right, like that does translate through. And when you love what you do, you create better work, you market your work better, you sell more, you have more ease. Like it's not magic, but it kind of is magic when it's like, oh, this is fun. People want to have fun. Like they want to buy into that. They want to like experience that for themselves and not just like, yeah, here, but like whatever your emotion that you're settling into um that comes through in the work. And I think that's so special that we get to do that as artists.
I love that so much. And I 100% agree. And that's kind of the existential crisis I feel like every artist has to arrive at, because I think when I was younger, it was always this question of like, what should I make that will sell? Or what should I make that would make me successful or stand out or get this person's attention? And in that moment of crisis where like nothing is working, you hate what you're doing, you're so burnt out and tired, having that question, like, who am I doing this for? What would I do this if I never got recognized ever? And I think that is where the magic, like you said, starts to happen. And I remember I had an early mentor who would tell me things like, never paint this, these types of paintings never sell. And I would always like take everything with a grain of salt, but it did affect me. But I remember kind of going against it. And then years later being surprised that the honest work that quote unquote would never sell was what actually put me on the map. So I think there's so much wisdom in like surrendering the ego and all the fear that's like swirling in our head, and just realizing like people sense when it's genuine and it's made with love and passion. So thank you so, so much for sharing that. And I would love to hear too about I read on your website, part of your story is that you started to use more eco-friendly materials as well. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because it's so important and not talked about a lot. Like I see it, and there's even like a beautiful art store that I recently visited at the beach that had eco-friendly art materials, but it's not something that's on the forefront. I would love to
No.
hear your journey with that as well.
So I'm an oil painter, and oil painting is like a relatively eco-friendly medium, but you have to have a lot of solvents. You have to have a lot of like mixy things and powders. Like there's just a lot of things that you can begin to add into your medium. All paints are made from like the base material is a binder and a pigment. That's just kind of like the universal combination of paint. For watercolor paint, it's gum arabic. For oil paint, it's oil. For egg tempera, it's egg whites. Like you can, it's pretty cool when you strip it down. You're like, oh, it's that simple. Okay. So I began the process by thinking about, I was pregnant at the time. So pregnant with my son, suddenly very aware that my body was reacting in some really strange ways to paint. I realized this before, like the year prior. This is in 2016. So 2015, I had the meltdown, the breakdown, the burnout, the realization that I have to do this for me. 2016, like it takes my body a little while to come to terms with things. So finally, my brain and my heart were in it. And now my body was like, hi, I have to matter too. And I realized that I was breaking out in hives all over my arms. I was getting really sore throats all the time. And I thought it might be a little bit of like a hangover effect of burnout. Like your body keeps the score, and my body is a scorekeeper, let me tell you. So I'm like,
Same.
oh, it's just having a moment. It's just having a year. Apparently, it's going to be okay. And I'm like, oh, maybe there's something environmental happening. Like maybe there's something that I can change. And this wise woman walked by my studio. She was the person who owns my studio at the time. And she was like, oh, what solvents are you using? And I'm like, I don't know, like literally whatever I buy at Home Depot, like whatever I buy at the hardware store, because, I'm cheap and artists are really good at being very, I'm not cheap anymore. I spend a lot on art supplies now, but they're very good at being resourceful. And I'm very resourceful. So I was buying like, solvent at the hardware store by the gallon. And then just like dipping my fingers in it to paint with my hands, thinking, this is paint. It's beautiful. It's fine, right? No, it's absolutely not fine. It's absolutely not fine. There are carcinogens in so many of the art supply store materials. Of course, like the hardware stores aren't caring about that because they assume you're wearing a mask and they assume you're taking precautions and doing the things that you should be doing, or they just don't care. So when I began to pull that little thread of, oh, wait, is this why I'm having so many headaches and skin conditions and the throat issues and like lightness? I would get like very, very dizzy and shortness of breath. I'm like, maybe there's something I can just change. So I began to pull the thread with the changing my solvent to a way more body conscious, like not cancer inducing solvent. We love that.
And do you mind sharing what that is for those listening who might be interested?
If you're seeing the video, I have it right here in front of me because we're in my studio. This is my favorite Chelsea Classic Studio lavender brush cleaner. This isn't what I began using in 2016. This is what I've like shifted to now. Their line, I don't even have a relationship with them. I should totally get a sponsorship with them. All the
Shut up.
time. I'm like, this is what you have to use. It's not the cheapest, but look at how like this if you're seeing it on the video, I'm holding a jar. It's 32 fluid ounces. I've used so little of this, and I bought this like 6 months ago. It goes so far. You keep recycling it. It's magic. It's absolutely magic. So that's my brand of choice now for my oils, for my brush cleaners. And then I began like obsessing and having so much fun obsessing with pigments, because pigments are various in their like most pure form. They're various forms of soil, which is so fun when you're like, wait, the dirt under my feet can be paint. Yes, I have a couple of reels about that. If you're like, wait, how does that happen? Go check out those reels. But you can make paint from the dirt that you walk on, and it's just so cool. And the rocks that you find in gem stores can become paint. It's magic. It's so much fun. And then you can, of course, source paints that don't have heavy metals in them and don't have like cadmiums and cobalts and lead. Obviously, we don't want to have lead. So there's just ways that you can make your paint studio eco-friendly. And I have a free download if you want to put that in the show notes about all this. Like, wait, this is a lot to take in. And it's a lot to like to go into your studio and begin looking around and being like, wait, are you safe? Are you safe? There are safe ways to use almost everything. The quickest and easiest way to begin, if you don't want to change all of your supplies, is just to begin wearing gloves. And if you're a little bit nervous about something in the air, just wear a proper mask, not like a little cloth mask that doesn't do anything, for like an airborne carcinogen, like a fume. But just wear a mask if you're like, I don't want to change all of my stuff, but I also don't want to suffer and I don't want to have lasting effects of my paint. And if you're pregnant, especially, that was again my like inspiration for all of us, was wanting to care for that brand new life inside of me. So that was my like, oh my gosh, I love this child. I worked really hard for this child. How can I make sure that this is okay?
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I do love Chelsea's the oils and their solvents as well. It was I'm glad someone invented it. That was very generous on their part. That's amazing. Something else that I think you and I both have in common is you have a passion for passing on what you've learned and the things that are working for you to the artist community, which is so beautiful. And I read a little bit about you in the past where you said that when you went to art school, you didn't learn how to support yourself as an artist. Can you talk a little bit about the early journey and how did you start figuring things out? Because I think it's so overwhelming for artists, and there's a lot more resources now than when I graduated. When I graduated, it was just like, you're on your own, go. And I was waitressing and it was really, really hard. And over time, I started to like piece things together and like release the shame of like selling my own work and all these things. And I'd love to hear your story on this.
Wait, the shame around selling your own work. Oh, that's
It
so
was bad. It was bad for me. And I know for so many artists, I think it is too. It's like, oh, did I fail?
well, you're told, especially if you come out of an art college, like an art university, they, I mean, obviously they want you to be as successful as possible. And also, I think I realized when I was in art school around my senior year, maybe junior year, like everyone that's teaching me, I'm like, you're not really a professional artist. You're a professional teacher. You're a professor. And I had that realization. I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't have to worry about this because you have a salary. So you're giving me advice that you haven't had to practice in like, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years for some of them. And I'm like, okay, wait, hold on. I have to stop coming to you for my like experiential knowledge, I guess I would say. They, of course, are extremely knowledgeable, but as far as like their lived experience, they don't really have to worry about selling art because they have a professorship. But yes, they want you to go into this, obviously, like they want you to go into the route of being a represented artist in a gallery because that's kind of the track, or like getting a fellowship or getting like, the track of being a fine professional in the art world artist. I left my university experience with professors absolutely not knowing how to set us up for success at all. I graduated in 2008 from a small art school, and I was told I should work at a framing shop. I'm like, what do I do? Post like, what am I doing after graduation? I'm just kind of like freaking out a little bit, I like to have my life in order a little tiny bit. So I sat down with one of my professors and I was like, what should I do post art college? And he was like, You could work at a framing shop. You could work at an art supply store. You could,
For $9 an hour, or not even, probably like 7 at
like,
the time, yeah.
I, what am I doing with my paintings though? Like what? So I just definitely took all of my I realized that the art school for experience for me was incredible. I loved learning how to be an artist, like how to create art. That's all it was for me. It was absolutely no instruction whatsoever in how to make a living with this art that I now know how to create. And honestly, it's not their job. Like their job is to tell you how to create art. And it's a business major's profession to learn how to run a business. So I had that realization a little bit the hard way of like, oh my gosh, you're not actually going to help me with this. I'm on my own here. So I was a little bit smart and double majored in graphic design because I'm like, that's going to be really necessary. I'm going to need that. And I also really enjoyed it. And I interned at a gallery thinking if I could intern at a gallery, I could at least get the inside scoop on how that part of the world runs. And what I found was at the time that I interned, this was in 2007 in the South, I was extremely disheartened because the gallery represented half a woman. And I say half a woman because the woman they represented was paired with a man.
Oh,
So they
come
were
on.
a duo partnership. And I'm like, where are the women? Like, I'm just curious here. And I'm not trying to be like incredibly feminist when I'm asking this. I'm just trying to be like, I need to see myself in this experience a little bit. I'm stepping into this in a year. I was graduating the next year, and I'm like, just like what? And the gallery curator was a woman, and she's like, oh, they don't make it. They have babies and they just stop making art. And I'm like, okay, so now I know not to do that. Cool, I can do that. So that was kind of what I entered my like post college and adult life with, that kind of like, oh, I'm really on my own here. And it might be a combination of living in the South and like it's just, 10 years behind everywhere else in a lot of ways. I love the South. I still live here. But it definitely feels like you kind of are on your own if you want to make something progressive. And progressive is in giant quotes. Like, I just want to make money with my art. Come on. It's not that progressive. Um, so I think there was a little bit of a benefit to that though, because I am someone that has some built-in tenacity. And I think an artist really needs to have tenacity because you're not going to get those glorious emails in your inbox asking you to do this beautiful thing every week. It's going to be like once a year, maybe. It's going to be a lot of you being like, hi, here's my work. Hi, you
Mhm.
love this. I love this. This is incredible. I'm so happy I get to do this every day. Thank you for supporting me. It's going to be a lot of you putting yourself in front of people, and that takes so much tenacity. And I don't like it still. It's, it is what it is. But there's something really, really cool about knowing that when you begin your career or when you're in your career, because the more you can settle into, oh, I'm on my own. Like, even if you work with the gallery, even if you have representation that you're like, I'm good for life, you're not, you're on your own in this career. And there is a community of artists around you. And that's why I think you and I both relate on this. Like, that's why it's so sweet to create community. It's so sweet to get to share. Like, I've been doing this for like 17 years now. It's so cool to get to say, okay, this is what worked in 2010. This is what worked in 2015. This is what's working in 2020 and beyond. And this is what's working exactly now. And this is what's not working. Like, there are things now that I'm like, okay, I tried that. Don't love it. It didn't work very well. And just getting to share that with other artists, it doesn't take anything away from me at all to do that. I'm sure you relate on that. Like, it really does not diminish my artwork's effect in the world. What it does, and it's so cool to have this like perspective on it now, what it does do is expands how collectors expect to meet artists. Because what's changed since I graduated from college and was told, I don't know, kid, work at a frame shop, I guess. What's changed is now collectors expect to find art in the world. They don't even have to go to a gallery, and they don't expect to. Like, I meet collectors every day that are not gallery patrons or gallery shoppers. They are just random people who own a beautiful home and they want a beautiful painting. And I'm like, hi, here I am. And
I love
that's the benefit of knowing that you can take care of yourself. You are dependable. You can meet your people where you need to meet them. And not everyone wants to go to a gallery and enter that fine art world. That's scary for a lot of artists. It's also really scary for a lot of regular people who are like, I just want something pretty in my house. Um,
Absolutely. I love that so much. And I really resonate with your story as well. In school, and I agree. I learned so much about how to be an artist, how to make art, how to navigate art history and contemporary art, but it was
totally.
this very like disconnect, right? For okay, well now my options were, I just want to quickly share when I asked my professors, like, okay, well, what do I do now? And mind you, just little perspective, I was an immigrant kid who spent like the first year of college living in someone's basement, couldn't afford housing. And I was like, I need money because I will literally be on the street. So like, what do we do? And I hate like I think there is room, and now I understand that was very much in survival mode, and I'm healing that part of myself. But there's definitely a need to make art when you're not in survival mode, where it's not for money. But at the time, as a college kid, like you gotta have some options. And my options were go get an MFA and keep learning. I'm like, I can't take out any more loans. Like, you don't understand. So it was very, and it wasn't their fault because that's what they were trained in, right? They weren't trained to, and social
Right.
media wasn't a thing either. So it was just this interesting time and space of like, we don't know, the world is changing, but we can't help you.
You're not practiced in it. That is so scary. And also, that's so brave of you to rely on your art through that. Like, I didn't know
I
that.
know,
That's so
very
cool.
reckless, but I like it was one of those things I'm like, this is it. I don't have a plan B. Like I have to make this work because I love, and I couldn't see, I was told by my high school guidance counselor, go to international business because you know a second language. And I'm like, I don't do that. Like I don't know what I would even do.
And yet now you're running a multifaceted business.
Right. Isn't it ironic? But I had to go through it my way. Like I couldn't just say, I'm going to go to business because I don't know how I would be an artist. I just knew like I had to take the risk. And that's one thing too. Like I agree with you. Artists do need to have tenacity. And I think a little bit of like risk tolerance too. Because I think there's so many things where we have to trust our gut. It makes no sense. Might not even make sense financially for years. But then one day it all comes together and you're like, thank God. I wasn't completely insane.
Oh, absolutely. Like being willing. I think that's the thing about being like an artist that makes it and an artist that doesn't. My graduating class was like 30 people, and out of those people, there are two or three of us that are artists still. And,
Same.
it's just so sad and crazy. But the ones that make it, I think you're right. They have that risk tolerance. They also have that deep, deep knowledge that they can depend on themselves. Like you'll do what you got to do. You have something in you that's like, I'm okay with some suffering because I love my work so much. I love creating so much. It is worth it. And I will do what I have to do to show up in the studio every day or every week or whenever you can. If you have a part-time job or a full-time job and you show up on Saturday mornings, great, you did it. Like that's fine.
Mhm. I love that so, so much. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I would love to ask you if you could share just a few simple ways. Let's say an artist is listening, maybe they're young, or maybe they've just been like pounding their head trying to get into a gallery and it's just not working. What are some ways that artists can get started advocating for themselves and maybe even trying to sell their work on their own, the first few steps?
Well, the first step is creating work that you feel comfortable talking about. And that doesn't mean that it needs to be your best work. The work that I began selling is honestly bad.
Same.
I actually had a collector who offered she was redesigning her home and was like, do you want this piece back? And I said, yes, just because I want it back. It is so bad. I bought it back from her and, we just kind of made it like a nice, clean, even deal, which I'm thankful that she reached out and didn't just, throw it away or donate it, but it's not good. So all that to say, create work that you're comfortable talking about publicly, that you feel proud of. If you can sink into, again, that thing that I come from, where like, this made me so happy to create it. This made me so happy in the studio. I felt all of these feelings. Bring those with you when you begin talking about your work, because that's what people want to buy. They don't need to buy the most gorgeous thing. That's very subjective for one thing. Everyone has different tastes, different preferences. You'll see that the more that you sell your work, the more you're going to be like, wait, interesting. You like that one the best? Oh, huh. Okay. And you don't begin to doubt your taste, because obviously I do think that the artist has, like, you have the best taste when it comes to your work. But it is reassuring to know that someone might approach your work at a show or on your website or wherever, and they'll gravitate towards something that you're like, oh, okay, I didn't love that one, but I just decided to put it up there anyways. So the work doesn't have to be the best, but have work that you're proud of, that you feel confident talking about. Um, you can talk about that work wherever it makes the most sense for you to talk about that work. And I'm going to say talk about that work. And what I mean is marketing. And that word can come with a lot of preconceived ideas and a lot of like shoulds and checklists. And I'm not doing it well enough, and now I have to pay money for ads. No, let all of that go. All you're doing is letting someone see your work in whatever way you want to do that. The first ways that I recommend, if someone's like really just starting out, is something local-ish. And I say that because your local community is going to be your most supportive. We have this really precious animal instinct to care for those that are close to us. I love it. It's very cute. In like 2024, it's really, really sweet that we still have this, like, oh, hi neighbors. I don't know.
Thank
It's
God. Thank God.
I
At
know.
least there's something something left.
Our brains are still wired to care about our neighbors. And it'll just give you a space to kind of practice sharing your work in a way that feels like you're not putting it out into the giant world where you're going to be the tiniest little like microfish in the most giant ocean, because that is what happens. I still feel that today. Even though my like practice in this is quite like, I've been doing this for a while and I have a large-ish audience, I still feel like no one even knows I exist, but they do. So start local-ish. And even if that means that you begin online, tag your local community in whatever you share on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or wherever you want to begin. But pick a platform that you enjoy. I think that's a nice thing to begin with, one that you feel comfortable with already. Maybe Instagram. Instagram is a pretty good one for a lot of artists. You don't even really need a website to begin. You can begin by selling your work like right on your Instagram feed or right at a show or a pop-up event. Or you can even begin with like doing like a short-term, not even a gallery thing, but like maybe there's a local shop that you're like, can I have my art on your walls of your shop, or can I consign my work in your gallery for a minute? And when I say these things, like start with places that feel very approachable, that feel like they're very welcoming to emerging artists. You might not want to go to like the finest, most bougie gallery in town, although again, that Tenacity, go for it. Go for it. Why not? But maybe just start with places that feel like they have an opening, they have that receptive energy to them, and they have the right vibe, they fit your vision, they fit your brand. Brand is again, like maybe you'll figure that out as you go. But start by just sharing your work. Like let it be seen, let it be known. Don't underprice it. A lot of artists begin selling their work for like $20 or $40. And I'm like, baby, the canvas cost you that much. Like you're not making any money. You didn't even pay yourself anything. So start pricing your work so that it's logical for you to keep showing up in the studio. We don't want to be, paying to practice our work too much if we can help it. But don't price it so that it's just really outside of your community's comfort level. In my community, I know that a painting that is $7,000 is a little bit out of their comfort level. 700, even 3,000, that's fine. But I know for where I live, that's kind of their spending range. If I were to go to New York, Paris, LA, my prices could easily shift to fit that market where they're much more comfortable with 20,000, 25. Like they're like, yeah, okay, I want that. Crazy. But keep your pricing kind of in the realm of your local community if you're beginning local. When I recommend that, that's a great place to start.
I love that. Thank you.
A lot of artists, this sounds so simple, and there's even like it's a bit frustrating how simple it is. But when I say your photography matters, I mean it really, really, really does matter. Use your iPhone, edit your photos well, use a proper camera if you have one. But especially if you're only selling in a digital space, the images of your work are all someone has to go off of if they're considering the value of your work. They're looking at an image. If they like the image, great. If they don't, they're going to keep moving right along without even they're not thinking anything negative about you, just so you know. No one's ever like, that artist is terrible. No, they're just literally not thinking about you, which
Yeah, no,
is
it's so
okay.
true. Thank you for sharing that. And that's what it is so simple, but so important. We always talk about it in our community too. We have like a little training, and I'm sure you do too. It doesn't take any, like, iPhone is perfectly fine on a nice overcast day, as long as it's just using your common sense. Like, does this look weird? Does it look uneven or blurry or glare? And sometimes I'm lazy and I just post it anyway. But overall, like, if you're trying to create something and make an impression, I totally agree with you. And I love your advice about local. I think that's so important because even now, like, I'll exhibit my work all over the world, but if I started that way, my nervous system would absolutely explode. It was
Yeah,
such a great way to build my confidence and get used to talking about my work, get used to selling it, even if it was really cheap back then. Like, just that it's like a habit forming thing, right? So thank you so much for sharing that.
really.
And it's so underappreciated too, because now I've had collectors who bought like tiny $70 paintings from me back in the day, and they still follow me, and sometimes they'll send me a newsletter and be like, I still have your painting from like 2011. And it's so sweet, and I just appreciate that. And I'm proud of my like younger self for, swallowing my ego and just saying, no, this is what I have right now. I'm going to make the most of what this opportunity is. So thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
And one more thing I want to ask you is about your beautiful retreats. One of our community members, Haley, was just on your incredible retreat. I would love to hear how you got started with that. What inspired it, and what do you hope your clients experience as they go on these trips?
Yeah, oh my gosh, the retreats are so special. They're so special to create. They're so special to dream up and to like manifest into the world. They're so risky to create. Also, they're very like business owner to business owner talking. There's such a risk because they're so expensive at the beginning, like when we're putting on down like down payments and deposits. And I'm like, it's good. And then every time it's so special, so special. The retreats began kind of as a growth out of doing workshops in my studio. This is like my home studio, but I used to have a studio that was a little bit larger, wood floors, big, windows, the whole, so lovely, so pretty. We love it. So I would have workshops in my studio. It would be one day, maybe 2 days, but they would include like, a little snack and maybe lunch, and then we'd all go our separate ways and we come back the next day. And it was so much fun. It was a great way for me to begin teaching. The first time that I taught, I was shaking. You could hear my voice shaking. I'm positive. I was so nervous. But I noticed that people just kind of want to linger. They want to like, they are there for the art and for the information, of course, and like their own creative process, but they really want to step away from life and like linger in some gentleness. And I was like, oh, interesting. So, of course, I just went all in and booked my first art retreat in Paris, outside of Paris, in like the Loire Valley. Um, just go for it. Let's just make it big. Let's just do it. So, you rented a chateau and everyone stayed on the property. There were 16 participants at the first retreat, which is a number I usually like to have in between like 10 and maybe 15 people if I can like choose my ideal number. It's just very peaceful that way and feels like everyone can get to know each other and it's very safe and it's just beautiful. So I just decided to dive in and make something as glorious as I could possibly imagine. I love to partner with someone for retreats. I've only done one retreat solo, and even then I had a little team. But I love to partner with someone that brings out another side of, if I can think of this beautiful experience, how can I bring my fullest self, and then what's missing? And the person that I like to partner with always brings those other things that are kind of like, you're an expert in this. I trust you implicitly. So it began with my friend Julie and Beth, and then we did a couple retreats in Spain and France in 2015 and 16 and 17. And then in 2020, I did a retreat during COVID, which was such a like strange moment in like the countryside of Alaska
Oh,
with
wow.
my dear bestie, Tanya Vall. I love her. Her work is incredible. She's a natural painter, florist, photographer, cook, all the things. She's that woman. She can do it all, let me tell you. Um, So we did this retreat during COVID, and it felt like the most surreal. I mean, obviously just getting there during COVID was in that season. I don't know if you remember the summer during 2020 when people were like, okay, we're done. That's over. That was a horrible spring and now we're done with it. Obviously that's not what happened and it continued on for the next 2 years, but and it's still kind of happening still. But that moment in July, like June, July, people were kind of like, okay, maybe it's going to fade. It's summer. So we had all these precautions in place. Everyone quarantined pre retreat. We took COVID tests at certain points throughout the getting to, Alaska process. And then we all met in the countryside of Alaska, which was just crazy, and fell into creativity and painting and talking with other humans, which felt so sweet at that time after being like isolated for so long. Um, and I feel like they actually kind of still feel like that, even though obviously COVID is no longer an issue and we can have far fewer precautions leading up to a retreat now, thankfully. But they really do feel like you're stepping away from normal life and you're falling into the simplicity of who you are as a human. A lot of people like shed a lot of tears at retreats because this is the one time in most of our adult lives when everything is taken care of for you. You're responsible for getting there, for, accessing the retreat itself. But then once you step into that space, it's my job and Tanya's job or whoever I'm working with. It's our job to let you fall into inspiration gathering primarily. And then whatever creativity wants to come out of you, that can come out of you. But really, we don't really care about that. We'll teach you all the things. We'll talk about natural paint and ink making and dyeing and like all the things, poetry, and the food is so good. But really, whatever you create is kind of like a bonus byproduct. But what they're really there for, which they don't really know when they sign up, but what they're really there for is letting the ego shed and all of their roles, all of their parts that they play in the world. A lot of them are like very, very busy business people, moms, retirees. Maybe they just like launched something and just like had their first, like a lot of people come to celebrate like a book deal or like some big thing happened in their life. And they have to shed all of that. And then they kind of sink into, oh, I'm just a girl and I just want to create and I just want to see beauty and I just want to feel, and like everything can fade. And the first day you watch them fade all of that. And by day 2, they're the silliest, happiest people. And they're like giggling and dancing. And Tanya and I are so silly and happy also. And they're crying and they're like sharing their deepest selves. And I'm like, it took one day to shed your ego. It took one, like,
Amazing.
it's genuinely so special to get to experience that. And the more I can offer that, the better for sure. So I'm excited
That
about
sounds
2023.
perfect. Oh, it's so beautiful. I hope to make one of your retreats one day. That sounds so that sounds so amazing. Thank you for doing this work. And I agree. I think for me, I haven't actually been on an official retreat, but when I go to residencies and similar thing where people just feel like they can have this space is once again, it's like you're stepping out of survival mode. There's no bills or to-do lists. You're just there with your art supplies and new people that get you. And it's the most healing thing to just allow yourself those pockets of time like that. So thank you for doing this super important work. Emily, I feel like I could keep talking to you forever. And I feel like I'll probably have, we have like a part 2 to talk about all the other things that you do. And it's just been so amazing to connect with you. And I know you have so many ways that you serve the art community. Can you tell our listeners how can they learn from you? What are some ways they can connect and follow you or even join one of your programs?
I would love that. Okay, let's see. I feel most proud of getting to serve the art community in particular. Just in like, I think there's a tonal shift happening, and I'm very honored to get to be a part of that shift that's happening in the creative world where artists are learning that this actually is a career, that we can make it, that we can depend on ourselves, that we can love our creative work, and that others also want to love it. So I get to do that in a few different ways. The most impactful way is through making artwork, the course that I created in 2019 and stand by and love. It only runs once a year because I really pour a lot into it and show up live and, really give the participants a lot of mentoring and myself. So we do that once a year. It's 9 weeks long. It's really, really life-changing. And it's so cool to get to hear from the alumni and to get to watch their ongoing success and watch them like do things that surpass my own impact in the world. And I'm like, oh my God, you just went and did that. I love seeing that. So that's like so gratifying. And to hear from them and be like, hey, thank you for that course. That changed my life 4 years ago or 2 years ago or last year, whenever it was. And it really is just that inner shift. And of course, there's lots of practical ways that the inner shift like comes out. We talk about all those inside of making our work. But the main shift is knowing that your work has value, knowing that it is valuable to somebody else, and knowing how to give that value to them in a way that's like, oh yeah, of course they want that. Of course, selling is now easy. Amazing. And again, that goes into like your Instagram and your emails and your sales pages and all these things that are like the clothes of your business and the clothes of what you offer, but that beautiful thing that is under all that, oh, you're already doing it. So that's really, really very special to get to promote and to get to just participate in collectively with all the people that have been through that course. And then that kind of feeds into a membership that I offer that is much like it's quite affordable. I love it. Doors are only open twice a year and they open again in April. So it's a little bit of a wait for that one, but it's just a sweet, sweet space with like the most precious humans who just continue ongoing support and love and that nurturing that you might get inside of something like, making artwork where it's really like big and it's a short-term impact because it's 9 weeks long and then you're done, but it's like really heavy for a minute. The collective, the membership is really gentle and ongoing and that sustains support. So I love that so much. But I have a free thing coming up in January if people are interested in a little recentering for the new year. It's called the Goal Setting Workshop, but I set goals in a very artistic way. We're not, we're not going to be as focused on the goals as we are the dreams and the aspirations and then actually making them happen. So that's a sweet thing that I offer in January. People are like, I just want to like, get a little free taste. It's free. There's a whole book that goes with it, a live workshop. So
Love that. Yeah, feel free to share that with us so we can include it in the show notes for our listeners as well. It's brilliant. I feel like artists, I've taken a lot of business courses and I think you and I overlap on some of them. I know you're one of Stu's students as well, Stu McLaren, right? And sometimes and I love all of my business mentors and people I've taken courses for, but I've come to realize, especially this year, like it really dawned on me that artists are so different and that language does not always resonate with us. And we have like, being in the business world now, I kind of am starting to accept and understand it, but still, like my soul still rejects that like very masculine, very rigid energy. And I've really loved that you also understand that artists are very beautiful, sensitive, and special humans.
and like that's why we're needed in the world. And I don't ever want to tone that down in myself. I definitely like I get what you're saying about like the masculine energy of like a business course. I've taken enough of those to know exactly what you mean. And I'm like, oh no, that is not my energy. And it felt like I needed to pressure myself into that for a minute. And I'm like, no, that's taking away why people actually like me, why they feel resonance. And it also, for me, felt like I don't ever want to pretend. I'm too old for that. Like I'm not 21 anymore and trying to fake it till I make it. No, I've made it. I'm not going to pretend who I am anymore. We're going to be authentic and genuine. And if that means that I show up with a really gooey heart some days, so be it. So be it.
I think
But
that's the magic of it too, in a world that is very much, quick detour, sorry to take us down this rabbit hole, but sometimes you feel this pressure of, artists trying to learn from these marketing people and even on their Instagram, their reels are like very formulaic. They're very like A to B. They're very consistent and they seem to be showing up with so much energy all the time. But us, because we pour so much of ourselves into our work, we don't always have that oomph. Like we gotta honor those ebbs and flows, and we don't have most of us don't have huge teams backing us either, and just really understanding like there's so much value in what we do, and that is very luxurious in this world of like fast-paced, constant contact. And so yeah,
It's
thank you for
so,
contributing.
I love that word, like luxurious. It's luxurious for you to run a business in that way. It's also luxurious for your viewer because they can also like regulate with you. They can breathe with you. Like the energy of what you're putting out is at ease and it's pleasurable. And that translates, let me tell you, because you can tell when someone's like ego stressed and they're like, oh, by Friday night when it goes away. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't even want that. Like that is stressful. Urgency
Absolutely.
is great. We love, the boundary of something ending, I fully support. Whenever we do the course launch, it does have like a boundary, like, okay, on Friday, I am done marketing this thing. I love that energy for me, let me tell you. But it's different than, I don't know, having this like, do you ever go shopping online and it says like discount ends Friday morning or in 20 hours? And I'm like, they do this every time I come on the site. They're always ending a discount in 20 hours. And I'm like, this is not real.
No, it really isn't. And I think people are catching on, and it's becoming less effective too. It's like, can you just tell me, can I just take what I need? That's kind of where I'm at now too as a consumer, but all of these parts are so important. And once again, thank you for this beautiful work that you're doing. I'm so excited to see what's next for you. Is there any exciting plans coming up for you in 2025?
Ooh, okay. Yes. I'm planning on renting. This is my studio. It's like maybe 7 feet by, I don't know. I don't do numbers, but it's like not very big. And I felt like all the work I've created here has been precious, but I can really only create up to like maybe 20 by 40 if I'm really clearing out the space and like really putting a lot of stuff in my living room for a minute to clear out that much space. But most of what I've naturally created here is like 18 by 24 size, which is great. Easy to sell, easy to create, it feels good. I love it. But I'm going to rent a studio in 2025 just for a week to give myself my own personal residency and go into that week and create some really big, big work.
Oh,
And is it
so
going to sell? I don't know. Is it going to go anywhere? I don't know. Where am I going to put it? I have no clue. But I'm just like, I just have to go and like physically splash some paint around. And like, I'm so excited about it. So that's what I'm looking forward to next year for sure.
That's exciting. I actually just did the same thing. I got back from Paris in October. I went to Art Basel and I was like, I saw really beautiful small works and I paint like in all the sizes. Like I love all of them. And I was like, I'm going to keep making small things. And literally the minute I walked into my studio, I was like, no, I rolled out a 7-foot canvas and just like no plan. And I'm just like, no, no,
Yeah.
not small, big, very big. I
Go.
felt so good.
Work
Well,
must be so beautiful big too. It's so colorful and like the rich depth. Ooh.
thank you. And same with you. Cannot wait to see. Please tag me and I can't wait to share it with
Oh,
our community.
I would love
Well,
that.
Emily, I want to be mindful of your time. Thank you so much for being such a fantastic guest on the show and sharing your wisdom and tips and resources for artists. Thank you so, so much. And where can our listeners find you online? What is your Instagram?
My Instagram is Emily_Jeffords, EmilyJeffords.com. Pretty easy.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I cannot wait to see what you create next.
Thank you. And thank you for what you do for the creative community. It's really, really necessary and beautiful.
Thank you so